Today I have my friend with me, Ben Miller. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. We met, about a year ago or so?
It was like literally a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. And this is why I wanted to invite Ben on the show today, is because success leaves clues. One of the observations I've made about Ben over this past year is just watching him have breakthroughs and go to the next level with the intentionality of how he lives his life. And he's increased his income 100% so far year to date compared to last year. And he hasn't just rolled up his sleeves and started doubling his hours of work. He's a husband, a father, a businessman. And thank you for being here with us, Ben.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I've been obviously a student of yours, actually, since I came in here, because not only just the outside conversations we had, the conversation we've had in the classroom, so to speak, and you and Matt both tutoring and mentoring me since I arrived here in the brokerage. So it's an honor to be here. I think your aspirations and your desires kind of continue to blossom as you get into the correct mindset, which I hope we talk about. I think we'll definitely talk about it. But right now, I think I'd be good at $500,000. I can almost guarantee you that will change over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And $500,000 for the day, right? That's pretty decent.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
You know, we live in such a culture where to me, it reminds me of almost I don't know if you've ever felt this, of being on a hamster wheel where I could have my best year of being intentional with my health, where I'm in better shape than prior years, maybe even the best ever with health and conditioning and fitness level. Same thing financially. And yet sometimes it feels like it's never enough, where it's like being on this hamster wheel of just running constantly and never being satisfied. And yet the reason I bring that up is I focused last year a lot on the topic of purpose as I was entering into being a 40-year-old man.
Right.
And answering the question I think a lot of us wrestle with from time to time, like, what is the purpose to life? Is there purpose for life?
Sure.
Why am I here when I've seen so many other people move on to what's after this world, right? And yet when it comes to purpose, I heard a gentleman say this, that it's enough money in order to fund your purpose, healthy enough to fulfill your purpose, enough finances to fulfill your purpose, the level of fitness and energy. There's an amount of those things required to fulfill your purpose.
Absolutely.
So I think it's not so much about just picking a dollar amount. It's thinking about, okay, big picture in life, what is, and we've heard this before, the purpose of business can be to fund our perfect life, or to fund our purpose is how I would choose to say it. There's an amount of time required for that, an amount of energy, amount of effort, amount of dollars. And so thanks for being to share. And I'm tracking with you, man. You reserve the right to change, because what it looks like to fund you and your family, you could wake up tomorrow or even think about it later today and just completely pick a different number.
Absolutely.
So you get to choose. So looking back, I mentioned a few minutes ago, success leaves clues, failure leaves clues. Looking back over the years, I could see where, man, I really dropped the ball over here and it came at a cost. There's some things, obviously, that you've really been working on to be intentional this year.
Yeah.
And so for those out there that maybe feel stuck, they feel like they're growing in discouragement and frustrating, wondering if it's possible for them to move the needle significantly financially for their family and not cheat, meaning you just double the hours of work.
Right. The easy, quick fix.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to, drive Uber. I'm going to do all these
That's
other
right,
things.
which is a fine thing to do.
Absolutely.
And yet, part of the advantage of being a business owner is that we could break the cycle of just trading dollars for hours.
Right.
With all that being said, will you unpack some of what you've been working on that's been impactful and influential to help you make some changes over this past year?
So one of the things, I think it started with when I first met with you and Matt. And I was in this mindset of, because you hear all these buzzwords, right? In the real estate business, in business entrepreneurship, you hear all these buzzwords that people really cling on to: mindset, motivation, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. I'm a contrarian by nature. I'm a punk rock guy from Southern California. I don't jive well with authority. I don't like to cling on to people or things. Mm-hmm. But when I met you and Matt, you're Chris. With you and Matt, I think the big thing was when I was talking to you guys were telling me that I was way too focused on money. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget it, because I kept saying, I really want to come here. I really want to be with you guys. You guys seem great. But what about the money? You guys charge a lot, da, da, da. And I remember you and Matt both kind of looking at each other and saying, you're worried too much about money. And I was like, what? do you mean? We're in real estate. That's what we're supposed to worry about. The epiphany was when you said, if you guys start focusing on good relationships, everything else will come. And of course, you dropped the Bible verses on me. And I was like, oh man. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And since then, I've had the mindset of seek first the kingdom of God and everything else shall be added unto you. I'm paraphrasing.
Sure, yeah.
But when I started pursuing the good relationships, I think that was the seed. That was the beginning of a mindset change for me. Because I always thought that if you read the books, if you talked to the right people, if you did X, Y, and Z and you followed this roadmap, then the mindset would just come automatically. The money would make the mindset come. That's what I thought. But the money doesn't. I've had very successful years in real estate, very successful years. And I got nothing to show for it. I had no different mindset other than running and gunning. Hey, Chris, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get you what you need, and I'm going to be over here while you're trying to figure out your life. I'm just going to go to the next dollar, But when I stopped doing that, when I stopped chasing the dollars, when things really started to progress for me, and then I really learned what the beginning blocks of mindset was all about. I learned that in order to, if you listen to the top business minds in the world, there's always this element of like, keep learning, keep pushing. The minute you stop learning is the minute that your business dies. So I just started learning. I just I got rid of fear. That's a big.
Oh, we're going to have to talk about that.
That's a big tail to this.
Get rid of fear. I don't want you to lose your train of thought.
Yeah. But I think transitioning, the big breaking point was 6 months ago when I was doing the things you guys wanted me to do. To a certain degree, I was executing, I was pushing my boundaries, I was doing stuff, but I was still staying comfortable because of the fear. I like comfort, like a good chair, like a good book, I like a good music, I like whatever, comfort.
What were you afraid of?
Success. In my mind, I was never supposed to be successful. I grew up poor in California. I never thought I'd make six figures in my entire life. Actually, I took pride in it. Took pride in the fact that I was never going to be rich or never have any kind of wealth. Because in my mind, wealthy people were spineless. Because the indoctrination that I participated in and was groomed into, it's like you just work hard and you die. That's it. There's no pot of gold. Pot of gold is for people that luck into it. So I never thought I was supposed to be successful. So that was the biggest fear that I had is like being successful. For example, every time I would start rolling really good in real estate and selling a lot of houses, I'd pump the brakes. I'd stop everything. I'd stop promoting, stop looking, stop grasping, stop going because I had a deal in the pipeline. That's good enough. It's good enough. And I would stop.
When did that start to change?
Well, 6 months ago when I realized that was no longer acceptable for me, but bigger than that was no longer acceptable for my family because through those times and through personal struggles, we've had debt building up over the years. And I had this epiphany one day, and I've always known it, but it's different when you actually realize, when you actually taste it. I had this epiphany one day that I could get my family out of financial straits. I work in one of the only businesses in the entire world that I can completely remove the burden of debt and the burden of my wife working by myself. Single-handedly, I could do that. And although we know that, we've been told that, there's unlimited wealth in real estate, blah, blah, blah. I was just treating it basically like another job. Like you just do the bare minimum. You make some friends, you do some things, and eventually you'll make a little bit of money and then you're just going to fade away. And then I was like, oh my God, I can do this. I can bring my family out of our debt. I can give my family the life that we've always dreamed of. We can go on trips to Greece and we can do all these things that we've been talking about. And it's literally all up to me. And that was it. That was the epiphany.
Sounds like you started to get some vision.
Yeah.
A vision of good things. When I hear vacation and a certain lifestyle desired with your family and loved ones, you started to get some vision that was a pretty compelling future in a positive way, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you can write it down, and that's what I really want to impart to people. You can write it down, you can vision board it, you can do all this stuff, but until you realize it, until you feel it intrinsically, until you know it in your heart, all that stuff is great because it helps push you in that direction. Like I remember we did the vision boards and I was like, this is the goofiest, dumbest thing I've ever been a part of. Like I don't want to do. But then I got into it. Because again, challenging my preconceived notions of what works, what doesn't work, and what can help has to be shifted on its ear in order for you to grow. And I remember doing the vision board and I was like, man, this is great. Like, because it laid, and then again, if you listen to anybody, any books about growth and mindset development, it is about putting it on loop.
Yeah, I would agree. It's amazing. It's like it's where the magic happens.
It's where the magic happens.
As I'm listening to you share, Ben, our offices are right across from each other. So we see each other on the daily. And there for the longest time, you would come into the office and you would put up your vision board and you would reach out to your people, strengthen, build relationships, do what you do best. Yeah. And you would have your vision board for you and your family right in front of you working.
Yeah. So I didn't lose it.
Okay.
It was getting so torn up in the transfer in my bag that I had to start leaving it at home because I didn't want to like rip it up anymore.
I see. Yeah.
So that's the only reason.
It's kind of special to you now. It sounds like
extraordinarily special.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's what really caused me to have this mindset shift. And then the fear aspect of it was not only I can do all of these things, but executing on plans and stop being so concerned with the no. I told you this, that when we talked about fear a couple weeks ago, I just literally was going for the no and just like, okay, you say no, someone else is going to say yes.
For your clients?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm cold calling on a FISBO or whatever, I was just like, listen, the sooner you turn me down is the sooner I can get to the next person that wants to hear what I have to say. And as soon as you remove that block of not caring what a random stranger thinks about you on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, as soon as you get rid of that, I mean, for me, it was a game changer. It was the door blew open and I was like, I am no longer, you ask me to make a FISBO call or a cold call right now, I'll get on the phone and do it right now, no hesitation.
It sounds like you detached yourself from the outcome.
Detached completely. And it's been a game changer. I no longer pace the office and go, okay, here we go. Here we go.
Right.
And psych myself up. It's just literally sitting down, opening my thing. Okay, who did I leave off on? Boop, boop, boop. That's it. There is nothing, and I'm constantly refining that process and everything. But removing that was a huge block for me. That was I'm still working on the door knocking thing. I don't know if I'll ever get rid of door knocking fear, but I got rid of the cold calling fear.
Fair enough. It seems like when it comes to fear, that just take an action. Like, just go do the thing that you're afraid of. Now, what I'm not saying is if you're afraid to jump off a bridge, I'm not saying go jump off a bridge, obviously. Right. And yet my point is that oftentimes just embracing the fear, meaning I could think back to a few years ago when I started swimming. No swimming experience, and I decided to become a swimmer, and I was just terrified. Like, once my feet could not hit the bottom, I would freak out.
Wow.
And I actually was having panic attacks in the water. Like, I'm trying to keep my head down. It was terrifying. And what's fascinating is fear can look different for each one of us, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's neat. My daughter, she's training for the Kill Creek Triathlon. That's next month. Her and I are going to race in that together. Super pumped about that. And yet just watching her in the water, no concerns. Like, she's like a little fish. She just swims, no problem. Right. And her biggest struggle is on the bike, actually. Her concern is going too fast down the hill. So it's one of those things where it's
funny.
I wish it got to a point where I could say I'm completely fearless. Here's the 3 tips to do that.
Right.
And yet each one of us is different. And I think we just kind of move to different levels. And yet each one of us have things that we may need to work through. Yeah. I heard that fear is actually based on keeping us alive. Like, for example, if a lion would come in the room, instinct would kick in as far as fight or flight. Our instinct would be survival. So it would be a smart thing to be fearful. And yet fear is actually different than anxiety. Anxiety is not about the lion in the room. It's when we're lying, telling ourselves a story that's made believe in our mind, that's painting the picture of the future in a negative way, that's causing all of the symptoms as if the lion were in the room, meaning heartbeat increasing, sweating, like the anxious feeling. Like, it's fascinating where part of it's survival mode. You mentioned building relationships. You've been working on that. Mindset piece, overcoming fear. Is there anything else that you would like to expand on those? Just because those are some pretty solid topics. I
mean, you could do an hour on each one. I would say the biggest thing for me has been the learning and the mindset. growth. As I was telling you earlier, there are a few people that I attached really heavily to in the last few months, one being Darren Hardy. And one being his mentor, Jim Rohn. And I think sometimes when you listen to people or when you read their books, something intrinsically speaks to you about the way they're communicating their point. And I feel that way about Jim and Darren Hardy. Although Darren Hardy can be very cheesy sometimes in his delivery, but the message is so super solid. When I first got into real estate, I read a book that changed my life called Atomic Habits. And Darren Hardy, the compound effect, kind of is a very similar notion, and it speaks to me in ways that I've never been spoken to before. It's the small bites leading into the bigger results, right? That's basically the compound effect in Atomic Habits. And for me, I had that down, right? I knew what I needed to do. But then when I really, I think it was Darren Hardy who says, basically you are what you can, as far as media goes every day. And I love a good comedy podcast. I'm a big music guy. But yeah, I can listen to some abrasive of both. And I realized that it's like junk food. I was pumping myself full of junk food because I always have to be entertained. That's a problem with me, and that's a problem with a lot of people in our culture, is that we have to be entertained. Sure. Listening, watching, something has to be happening all the time.
Right.
I decided that I needed to limit my amount of junk food in my life. The amount of news I was consuming, political news, church news, whatever. I need to limit basically negativity because it's a lot of charge from the right, left. There's no in between. It's just like you're mad either way. Comedy, while it can be good to laugh, but it's junk, right?
Sure.
So when I heard that, you are what you eat and you consume. If you're going to be consuming, why not consume something that nourishes your mind, nourishes your soul, gets the wheels going, gets ideas pumping through your brain? So when I switched that up and I just started consuming and learning all this stuff, so I have a rule where I have to at least read or listen to an audiobook at least an hour a day of something that I can learn. And then I have to listen to or read 30 minutes to an end. This is while I'm doing other things, spiritual reading. And then I have to journal now. So I had just added the journaling piece back into my life because I was a journaler for a minute. But I added journaling back into my life. And I think it's that constant self-reflection of the journaling and then listening and growing spiritually and mentally with your mindset shift has been the biggest thing for me. It is helped all aspects of my life tremendously, not just business, but interpersonally. I got in an argument with my wife the other day, and she's not watching this. What am I talking about? I got in an argument with my wife the other day, and within where I would be stewing about it for probably a couple hours, I was over in about 3 minutes because my mind shift was different. It was like, no, listen to her, sympathize with her, and try to get to a place of resolution quickly and without getting escalated. So I brought myself down. I think she was kind of shocked. I brought myself down real quick and said, no, you're right. Back in the day, this is how I would have responded to that. And you have every right to expect that from me now, but I'm not reacting this way now. So just
good for you.
And then we just moved on. So the mindset thing has been the biggest game changer in my life. That's in the last year. I cannot imagine. I'm more optimistic. I am more driven and focused because of my mindset than ever before.
It sounds like it. So you've changed. I'm reminded that sometimes in order to change the output, we have to change the input.
Yes. So that's great. That's better than the garbage in, garbage out.
Well, that's another great way to put it. It sounds like you've changed what you're giving your attention to, which has impacted your focus, the quality of your relationships, your mindset. And I remember my brother and I, it was about, I don't know, 2018, 19 or so, we got in this little debate. And I think he would agree with me now. And the debate is that what we listen to doesn't matter. And the context was music, right? And so it's just kind of funny looking back on that. And he and I have grown so much. And yet my point is that some people think, well, it doesn't really matter what you expose yourself to. I'm strong. I got this. I have a strong mindset. And I'm reminded, I could look back at my life where it's like, guess what? When I was partying with the guys, guess what my crowd was? It was the guys that party. And as soon as I started putting intentionality towards my wife and my kids and building and strengthening those relationships, meaning I started to say no over here so I could say yes to those are the most important people in my life. My point is that the people that we choose to surround ourselves with absolutely influence us and make a difference. And then also what we consume, whether it's food. So I love your metaphor there, whether it's the food that we physically eat or the consumption of content, whether we're seeing it with our eyes or listening with our ears, let's not be naive. It impacts our life big time, especially compounded over time, meaning we keep taking that in year after year. It's interesting that we can get by with some things for a day or two, a week or two, maybe a month or two.
Sure.
But you fast forward over years, that's when the results, good or bad, end up showing up is over time.
Well, I love that. And let me expand on that a little bit and challenge people, maybe even you or anybody that's watching or listening to this. Change your mindset for 1 week. Consume nothing, maybe physically, like eating and entertainment wise. Consume nothing but good, right? Eat whole foods. Don't eat too much junk food. Cut sugar out of your life. Listen to a good audiobook that can help you expand your mind. Listen to a good spiritual book. Do all those things that we're talking about. Do it maybe even 2 weeks. And then tell me how it feels going back. I would say that, like, if I just went back to my old media habits, and I've tried, it doesn't hit the same way anymore. The raunchy comedy, the more aggressive music, unless I'm working out, the more aggressive music, all this kind of stuff, it doesn't sit the same way because you feel this lack. You're like, this isn't nourishing me. Like this, like I could be spending my time better. Right now. So and the same with food, right? You when you start eating really clean, and an occasional piece of candy is really good. That's why I always moderation on everything. I'll still listen to the comedy podcast, but I break it up. Do 20 minutes here, and then I get a little like, this is But a little bit of candy is good, a little bit of all that stuff is good, but try to go back to your garbage diet and you don't feel good.
Yeah, well, you have a new standard.
You have a new standard.
Yeah, you're a new person.
So I mean, I would challenge people out there, like, just if it's really not harmful to you, then try going without for a week and then see how much you're like, man, like just listening to things, your mindset shifts. You don't even have to enact anything. Just listen to something positive. Listen to uplifting music. Listen to something, and then you'll be surprised as when you try to go back to the downer stuff, you're going to be like, I don't know about it.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned with mindset, if somebody says, okay, Ben, I'm tracking with you, because mindset's such a broad topic, right?
It is.
So what's a practical step that someone can take start to head a different direction with their mindset? Because it seems pretty obvious with nutrition. It's saying no to the excess sugar, saying no to sweets or whatever. And yet with our mindset, it can feel a little bit more complicated maybe for some. So what's a practical step that one could take to head a different direction with their mindset?
I mean, the biggest thing is there's always people coming in and out of your life. There's people that you admire and there's people that you don't admire. There's friends, there's family. Pick someone that you view as successful on all levels, not just business. Maybe someone at church, maybe someone in a social group, maybe even someone online, and reach out to them and say, give me book recommendations. How do I get into the mindset that you have? Now, it's easy to watch social media influencers who scream and yell, the car guy about take off your shirt and you're not really a man and stuff. And that's all fine and dandy because that can push you too if you're in the right mindset to begin with.
Right.
But I think reach out to someone like that and say, like, what is a book? Where can I start? And just start consuming content. But again, don't go 8 hours in one day and try to read this one book.
Yeah.
Nibble it. Like, but when you do it, it's the same as I view my prayer life. I would rather you nibble the book for 5 minutes and really consume the book than to binge on it for an hour and a half and only remember 5 minutes. And I look at my prayer life the same way. If you do it with all that you have. Pray to God with all that you have. And if you only have got 5 minutes in you, I believe God would honor that more than an hour and a half of you going, praying or whatever. And
Sure.
You're checked out.
Just going through the motions.
Just going through the motions.
Yeah.
So really be involved in the content, really consume it. And then just each day, set a timer for yourself. Say, put down your cell phone, put 15 minutes on the timer and say, I'm going to listen and or read this book for 15 minutes and do nothing else. And then just do it every day. Consistency is key to everything.
Yeah, that's good. I would agree. I'm reminded that you mentioned atomic habits, compound effect. It's the little things over time when done consistently that can drastically change things eventually.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but me, I wish there was this magic wand where it's like, okay, I have a negative mindset in this area, tap the magic wand against my head and poof, it's changed. And yet for me, at least, it's making those micro adjustments over time. And so if somebody is out there and they're like, Ben, I'm tracking with you, man. Like, I do desire to make a change in this area. I would encourage you with this, like, be patient with yourself, narrow it down to the one thing that you could do consistently over time that can make a difference. I'll give you a practical example. One of the things that I'm actively working on is washing the dishes. I had this mindset of once I come home from working I'm just not going to, I see the dishes. I'm aware there's a pile there from my family. And yet I would just act like the dishes didn't exist, right? Which means I had expectation, AKA that my wife would do them. And I thought to myself, you know what? I want to enhance wife's life by making it better, by stepping up and doing the dishes. So without making a big deal, beating my chest about it, making a look at me type of thing, I just started doing the dishes. Yeah. Now, I think I did share with you a few weeks ago, my wife wanted a new dishwasher.
Yes.
And so now she's in this season where she loves loading and unloading the dishwasher. So I'm just letting her go for it. But my point is that if we can narrow it down to the small thing that we could do, maybe in our business to strengthen and build a relationship, or for our spouse or significant other, just finding the one small thing that we could do diligently could make a big difference.
Moves mountains.
100%.
It really does. I do the same thing, or I try to do the same thing. I write goals in my journal every day. Small goals that I want to get done. I learned that from Jim Rohn. Small goals that I want to do every day in my life. And most of the time, what ends up landing on that list is, how do I love my wife? So, doing little, because my wife's love language, quote unquote, is acts of service. How can I love my wife today? Doing acts of service. Sometimes it's the dishes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's randomly buying her flowers. Sometimes, like last week, I put a little card in her lunchbox. I've never done that before.
Good for you.
But it was one of those things to show my wife that I am thinking about her, love her, and I care about her. And because sometimes you think by just bringing home money or parenting together that's good. We love each other. It's fine.
Sure.
But sometimes you have to do little small things to remind them. And it does. It pays dividends over time. I mean, and being humble about it, like you said, not beating your chest, be like, look what I'm doing.
Or make sure everybody notices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way. That negates all the hard work you can put in. So.
Yeah. So I think we live in a day and age where we have an advantage in many things, and yet one of them being is that we could have a mentor. You're learning from Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy. And anybody else intentionally? That's a solid list.
Yeah. The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
Yeah, okay.
Finding great knowledge in that. That's a
Stephen Covey, is that right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm finding a lot of really big pearls of wisdom in that. Again, it's all kind of the same philosophy with different things sprinkled in, but it's all kind of Rome wasn't built overnight. And, and real quick to your point earlier, I'm not going to I wouldn't say number wise, I'm going to have the best year in real estate ever that I've had, but in so many other ways. And this is the most successful year in real estate I've ever had because of all these things that we've been talking about. So sometimes, like you were saying, be gentle on yourselves. And we were talking about, the little things build into big things.
Right.
I feel like I'm positioning myself for the biggest. So I don't get down on myself that this year, number-wise, wasn't the biggest year I've ever had. Because I really feel I'm planting good seeds for a really good harvest next year. So I just want to sidetrack on that. But yes, I'm finding great reward in that. And Stephen Covey, I think, is where we landed on with that guy. And, really, obviously, my spiritual life plays a gigantic role in everything that I do. So really becoming more attuned to trying to read the gospel more and praying more and being of service more, like
Elaborate on that one.
I think being of service for me, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. Being of service for me in the world, outside of my community, even inside my community, I'm severely lacking in. I'm a very insular person when I go home. I do all this. I go, I talk and do all this kind of stuff. When I go home, I don't want to talk. I just want to, you kind of go inside a little bit. So I've really been putting myself out there a lot more lately when people need help I helped 2 people move this weekend and I hate moving. Although I have a truck and people expect me to do it. But really putting yourself out there and being of service to people and being of service to your family. How can I be of service to my wife today? How can I be of service to my daughter today? How can I be of service to the guy on the street? Like I've tried to establish this habit where I'm carrying $20 extra in my wallet, dollars at all times so I can give to people. And I'm not saying that to be like, whoa, look at me.
Sure.
But it's the mindfulness of getting in the habit of giving of yourself. And even if I don't, I really try to ask those people that are down on their luck, like, what's your name? Can I pray for you? That kind of stuff. And I'm trying to remember them in my prayers and things like that. But being of service to people is something I think we can, if we all just put it's one of those things, you put a tiny little bit of effort into those around you in your community, I think the ripple effects of that carry out through other people. And I think it can make a monumental shift in other people's lives too, because you'll never know how much you affect somebody by just a simple act of kindness.
That's good.
So,
well, you've really been working on a lot of different disciplines or habits, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What's been the most challenging over this past year looking back?
physical.
In what way?
I hate working out. I hate it. But I love the way I feel post. I love the fact that I am stronger, healthier. I would get a cold, a pretty good one, a knockout for men, a knockout cold for we're real bad.
I tell my wife that whatever she gets, it's a multiplier effect by the time I get it. Because she'll still be taking care of everything she takes care of. And here I am being a big baby. Right.
I'm
On the deathbed.
On the deathbed. I haven't been sick at all this year, outside of like maybe a sniffle of a cold.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm sticking with the program. I'm working out. And if I don't work out that day, I take a 5-mile walk, get my 10,000 steps in or whatever, bring my daughter along. And I'm trying to be as consistent as I can with it, but I truly hate working out. What freaks me out about it is like, and this is going to sound totally weird, is that like, I don't like when my heart is pounding too hard. It can pound hard, but when it's pounding too hard, I'm like, my old anxieties come up. I'm like, I might have a heart attack right now. Because I used to be a very large man.
Okay.
Very large. And so I get these old weird anxieties, and that's probably a whole other thing I have to deal with. But I do love the way I feel. But that's been the most challenging, because when I want to do that extra rep, it's not about if you can do it. It's about if your mind can push you past to do it. And I have a hard time pushing past. Like when I'm like, okay, you can do one more. I'm like, no, you're not. And I just drop that weight, dude. I'm just like, no, you're done. You're done. So I think that's going to be my next big thing, is like really pushing myself physically somehow, some way.
I see. What are you thinking? You don't want to say it.
I don't want to say, like, I'm not going to go like triathlete or anything, but
Sure.
I will say that I'm thinking in the realm of like some sort of competition.
We have a lot of folks in the office here that do all kinds of bodybuilding stuff.
I ain't getting up and
Fair enough.
and doing all this stuff, but but I have thought about maybe doing some sort of competition of some sort. So
Keep me posted with that.
yeah. Wow. So, but that's my biggest challenge. I just need to push past the mental aspect of being physically capable.
Yeah.
The eating part's great. My wife does not understand how I can eat chicken and rice every day. I love it.
Okay.
Give me all the chicken, give me all of the rice, and I'll eat it every day, and I'll never think about it.
Right.
I don't care. It's automatic to me. But the actual treadmill thing, I'm like, oh, this is so awful. But maybe it's the mindset of thinking it's so awful.
Maybe. You'll have to wrestle with that one.
After a swim.
What would you like to leave for the folks out there that connect and resonate with some of the things that you've shared about your life? What is it you would like to leave the listener with?
Don't ever think that you're done. Don't ever think that whatever field you're in, if you're in real estate, if you're a podcaster, if you're whatever field you're in, you're never done growing. Don't think that you've hit your limit, your peak, that age is a defining quality or factor of how little or how much you do in your life. I've done more in the last, I'm 44. I was about to say 45. Holy Toledo. I'm 44 now. I've done more, I've made more progress physically, spiritually, mentally in the last 2 years than I have in the previous 44 or 42 years. You're never done. You're never done. And embrace it. Embrace the fact that you can always I get fired up thinking about it, that how much more I have to learn, how much more I can improve myself. What excites me is thinking about the growth potential. And when I think about growth potential, it's rarely ever money. It's always like relationships. It's always like, how can I love my wife deeper? How can I be a better dad?
Yeah.
Because the money's great. Like, I'd love to take my daughter to California next year and just, show her all the places I used to hang out, Santa Barbara, Ventura.
Sure.
Like, oh, your dad used to hang out on that beach and blah, blah, blah. I'd love to do all that stuff. And I know that will come.
Yeah.
And I have the confidence now that will come, but that comes from believing the process and that it doesn't happen overnight, and believing that your mindset will change everything, and putting in the work because of the mindset difference. It's an all-in-one package. You can really accomplish anything and I know this sounds like if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd be sitting on a podcast talking about success. I'd be like, you're crazy, because I told you I wasn't supposed to be successful in any way, not just, it was all doom and gloom. So I would say, push past your fear. Challenge yourself all the time. Look inside all the time. Introspection is so important. Look at yourself. Look at where you can grow, and faith and family and finances, all the F's.
Yeah, that's good.
Look inside and self-examine yourself. Say, where can I make improvement? Because the more improvement, as you continue to make improvement, you'll see your life change around you in ways that you can never dream. And it's exciting because I feel like I'm just starting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
I feel like I'm literally at the ground. I'm like on the first floor of the Empire State Building. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, that's so good.
Second floor is going to rule.
Yeah.
And then the third floor, we're going to get even higher.
Right.
The fourth floor. And it's like, and eventually, the sky's the limit. And I look forward to just topping myself every year. Every year I want to top myself, and I want to bring, again, give my family the quality of life that they deserve. It's not about what I deserve. It's about what my family deserves.
That's good. That'd be such a motivating factor.
Yeah, it's great.
Earlier this year, I released my first book, The Path to Purpose. And in chapter 1, I share C.S. Lewis quote that I can't go back and change the beginning, but I can start today and change the ending. The reason I chose that one is for years, even though I wasn't even 40 yet, I started to say, you know what, my healthiest and best years of fitness were behind me. And I was starting to buy into the narrative of, when I was in 20s, that was my prime.
Right.
And one of the things that changed is realizing, hold on a second, is that 100% true? No, absolutely not. I met this guy named Doug, who's my triathlon coach, and he's 20 years older than me. Fit as a fiddle.
Crazy?
I mean, he is incredibly fit.
Yeah.
My point is that I was starting to buy into the lie that the older I get, the sicker I get, the tired I get, the weaker I get. And I'm thinking, where did I get that story from? So thank you for sharing that, because sometimes I think what I needed to do is let go of the past. I was trying to hang on to it and say, you know what, back in the 20s, this is what defined me. And actually, that was a limiting belief. And you know what I think about limiting beliefs. Those are things that hold us back from all of the things, the person I desire to be, what I desire to have. So limiting beliefs will limit me. And so I needed to let go of that and realize that my best day of fitness is ahead of me. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And language matters.
It does.
Language matters.
The words we choose to use.
You taught me with the limiting belief thing, and I was in my group the other day. I have a men's group, and it's every Monday night, and I was in my men's group, and someone's like, I just can't. And I said, you just can't? And I was like, how about you change that to I'm not ready to, or whatever. And it was just like, looking at me, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God, I'm turning into Chris.
That's too funny.
I'm turning into, but it's true. If you say, I can't do this, I can't be rich. I
Right.
can't be physically fit. I will never be mentally competent. Then you're dang right. You're never going to be that
That's right.
because you put the cap on yourself and you've got nobody to blame but yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Ben.
Thanks
Incredible
for having
job.
me.
Keep
Yeah.
going, man. The best is yet to come for you and your family.
yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
man.